Is my dog's teeth a cause for concern? I've started brushing my dog's teeth 2-3 times a week, and just last night I noticed my dog's teeth were turning blackish brown. My dog is 3 years old and is a Pomeranian, and I'm wondering if I could get some advice, please and thanks. The main thing around dog dental health is that whenever me and you eat rice, or whenever me and you eat pasta or any carbohydrates, we can break them down in the mouth because we have the enzymes to do so. Now, dogs do not have that enzyme. The enzyme is called amylase. So any carbohydrates you feed the dog, so any kibble you feed the dog, those starches are going to start slowly but surely accumulating in your dog's gums, and that tartar is going to start building up in your dog's teeth. So what we want to do, especially for our dogs, is to reduce the amount of carbohydrates and the amount of certain ingredients we feed our dogs. As a generic rule of thumb, you don't want to see any wheat, any barley, any corn, any soy, any rice, any cereals on the back of your dog's food. And so if you see any of those are going to over time build up in your dog's teeth. So those foods tend not to be the best for our dogs. The second thing I want to say is that you should always give your dogs natural things where they can clean their own teeth themselves. And by getting them something where they can get their canine teeth, their back teeth, into something where they can crunch up like that, that's how they clean their own teeth. So if you give them natural things like bones or things that are very, very hard, like yak chews, for example, those tend to be very, very good. Antlers are also very, very good. And so those are going to be extremely important for your dog's dental health. So yeah, a diet low in carbohydrates and plenty of natural chews. That's what helps with dental health. Second one, why is pet nutrition such a big deal with pet owners and veterinarians? I started noticing a lot of veterinarians or people who know vets having a really big problem with people talking about foods, what's good or what's not. And honestly, I understand where veterinarians are coming from. You have studied all the stuff about animal health only for someone online to tell you that the brand you are promoting that has medical research on it, it's actually bad or not the best. But at the same time, I also see where pet owners coming from, where other veterinarians or scientists are doing research on foods that are actually good or isn't good and have research behind it, like avocados and stuff like that. By the way, don't give your dog avocados. Well, let's start by simplifying the question because we could be here all day. Veterinarians have a very limited amount of time whenever they see patients. So it's very, very hard to get all your points across in such a small or short period of time. So whenever you go to the vet, they might be dealing with, 50 patients a day or 100 patients a day, whatever the case might be. So in order to get the best recommendation from the vet's standpoint, they would have to sit down with you and they would have to maybe go over your budget. They would have to go over your knowledge of food, what's good, what's not good, etc., etc. And it's a pretty long process. Whenever we do consultations in our branches, it takes us about 20 to 25 minutes for the pet owner to tell us everything the dog is getting. And that doesn't just refer to the kibble or the food they are given. It's also the treats, it's also dietary habits, it's also other potential maybe environmental allergies, etc., etc. Now, your vet doesn't have 20 to 25 minutes to devote exclusively to nutrition. So it's a lot easier for them to say, well, I think you should give your dog this, and that's the end of the conversation. And they do not take, because they don't have the time to give you better and more in-depth recommendations. Now, let's give the veterinary industry a hard time here and not the veterinarians. I want you to make that distinction. So veterinarians have nothing to do with this. It's all about the veterinary industry. So a lot of the big companies, a lot of the bigger kibble companies, those own or have big stakes in veterinary practices. So if I sell you the food and at the same time I have a corporate interest in a veterinarian, that just means that I can just sell the food and I can recommend my own food through the veterinarian, which is what these big conglomerates are doing. And so it is just another sales channel. It doesn't mean the food is better. It doesn't mean the food is more adequate. It's just another way of selling. If I have a dog food, I can either go to Walmart and try to flog it like that, or I can acquire a few veterinarian practices and try to flog it like that and try to distribute it like that. So a lot of the criticism that the veterinary industry gets is from these huge players owning big stakes in veterinarians, and by extension they are just trying to shift product and they are just trying to recommend product that way. Now let's talk about the science and let's talk about the nutrition for a lot of these veterinary foods. Any human dietitian would absolutely have a heart attack if you didn't look at ingredients, if you only looked at nutritional value. Now let me give you an example. If you have a kid or if you have a baby, do you trust what manufacturers put on the front, or do you read the ingredients? Because these biscuits, for example, they contain all the vitamins and minerals, etc., but they contain sugar. And by them containing sugar, I am going to eliminate them from my baby's diet or from my kid's diet. And the same should be said for your dog. As a generic rule of thumb, it's our belief that you shouldn't give your dog any wheat, any barley, any corn, any soy, any natural flavors, or any meat and bone meals. Anything like that is detrimental, is ultra processed, and has been cooked at very, very high temperatures and is ultra processed. So it isn't as good as something fresh or something minimally processed. Just like KFC or McDonald's, which are ultra processed, are never going to be as good as you making something from scratch with very good ingredients. But hey, we have hundreds of videos on nutrition, so watch some of those. And by the way, if you want to know what the best dog food is, I highly encourage you to download for free How to Feed Your Dog Better. The link will be down below. How to Feed Your Dog Better. Click in the link below. It's free. Next question. We give our dogs scrap of all veggies and fruits pretty much, except onions and grapes, of course. They love them. Broccoli stems, cantaloupe, green beans, asparagus, carrots, and bell peppers. She goes crazy for them. Big giant broccoli stems are my favorite because it takes them a while to finish them. LOL. Now, the thing with vegetables is that because dogs cannot break down the starches within the vegetables, you have to pre-process them in order for them to absorb the nutrients. The polyphenols are called, which are all the nutrients and vitamins and goodies from the veggies. So if you are going to give your dog vegetables, first of all, make sure those veggies don't add up to more than maybe 5 to 7% of the dog's diet. They're not really optimized to eat veg over meat. So I want you to either puree them or to process them somehow so they are a little bit of a puree, or you can lightly cook them for like 10 or 15 seconds so you can break them down first so your dog can absorb all the nutrients. Remember that when you are giving your dog vegetables, you aren't feeding the dog, you are feeding the dog's gut. And feeding your dog's gut isn't done primarily by feeding them raw stuff because they cannot digest them properly. So they need to be processed first somehow. What is the absolute best food for my dog to eat? What should I feed him? It's really interesting, these sort of questions, because you do not know and you do not have access to all the information whenever people ask these things. It depends on your budget. It depends on your lifestyle, for example. A lot of people will say that pre-prepared dog foods or raw dog foods are the absolute best for our pets. But at the same time, if you have little kids, if you live a very busy life, if you have a really intensive job where you are out of the house for most of the day, you might not have the time. You might not want to feed your dog a raw food. So what is the best dog food? Is high meat, low carb, good quality ingredients, high quality protein coming from animal sources. Remember, for example, that protein coming from chicken and protein coming from potato are two different things. You would need vastly much more potato protein to get the same than chicken protein. You would need a lot more potatoes than chicken to get the same amount of protein. So we want animal-based protein and we want lots of it, and then we want low amounts of carbohydrates, things that we recognize like fruit or veg. So as much meat as you can afford, you want to be paying for meat in the restaurant, in the supermarket, and in dog food, and low carbohydrate. That's the best dog food. Help, we are out of dog food and I really need some advice on feeding until I get paid, please. I'm out of dog food and don't get paid until next Thursday. I have a quarter pound of rice, 4 eggs, some zucchini noodles, and roughly half a chicken breast. My question is, can I combine all that stuff and just feed it to him until I get paid? Well, this is a little bit of a dire straits situation, but it can happen. It can absolutely happen. Listen, if you are constrained on budget to the extent where you don't get paid until next Thursday and your dog doesn't have anything to eat, anything is probably better than nothing. Your dog is going to be happy. Your dog is going to be looked after by you, hopefully, and you are going to be doing lots of bonding together. And when you feed the dog in that scenario, it doesn't have a lot of weight, because yes, nutritionally is not going to be the best thing you can give the dog. Nutritionally is not going to be the best you could provide them with. But at the same time, if you are financially constrained, some food is better than no food. I mean, this pet owner says, I love him so much, this is really causing me a lot of stress. So yes, absolutely. Feeding the dog whatever you can get your hands on is good enough. And also make sure you give your dog lots of cuddles and you spend a lot of time with him, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. All natural and premium sound great, but they don't always mean better. Focus on high quality ingredients, AAFCO certification, and clear protein sources. Avoid vague terms like meat meals. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the AAFCO certification is just another certification. I mean, the amount of things that are passable or okay for human food, but they aren't very good for us humans, is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, any chocolate bar isn't probably the best. Any ultra-processed food, any McDonald's, for example, is not deemed the best, yet it passes all the nutritional tests. But yes, all natural and premium. Instead of trusting manufacturers blindly on the front of bags, whether that says this dog food is phenomenal for a golden retriever, or this food is very good for kidney disease, is it really good for kidney disease, or does it have on the back the ingredients and the nutrition your dog is going to need for that particular activity or for that particular condition? A lot of these marketing claims on the front of bags are just that, marketing claims. So you do have to be a little bit savvy and a little bit skeptical and slightly cynical sometimes about some of these labels, because at the end of the day, manufacturers just want to sell product, just want to sell you more food. So if they want to put something is natural or hypoallergenic or oil free or grain free or whatever, that's because you as the consumer are being grabbed by that headline. We don't just want the headlines, we want the substance, we want the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. And the meat and potatoes of the whole thing are in the ingredients. The ingredients is arguably all that matters. Ask any human dietitian and they will examine those ingredients like a hawk. They also say here, which superfood do you add to your dog's bowl? Blueberries, antioxidants, pumpkin, great for digestion, salmon, omega-3 boost, eggs, protein powerhouse. Absolutely, I love it. With blueberries, if you can puree them, same with pumpkin, if you can puree the pumpkin, that's absolutely wonderful. Soothing support, gastrointestinal support coming from pumpkin. So remember that with any vegetables, you do have to pre-process them in order for your dog to absorb them. In terms of salmon, you can give your dog raw salmon or the salmon skin, for example. That's great. And eggs, I give my dog raw eggs, and they are incredible, an incredible source of protein and very, very cheap. Any advice for dogs' allergies, allergy testing, and is it worth it? Backstory, I have a 7-month golden retriever mix. We adopted him from a shelter in April. When I took him home, I noticed he had dry, flaky skin and brought him to work immediately for a bath. I'm a dog groomer. The oatmeal bath relieved some of it, but not all. He had a bit of watery poos, which I knew could be from his adjusting stress. When it continued and the flaking came back within the month, I figured it might be a chicken allergy and switched to salmon and sweet potato kibble. Now, here's where I need opinions, advice, suggestions, own experiences, anything. He seems to have diarrhea at least once a week. I've dropped a sample off at the vet and they've tested it and nothing came back as a cause. I've been looking into taking him to a different vet for a food and environmental allergy test on him and was wondering if anyone has done it. Was it worth it? Did it actually work? Well, yes, I do have a lot of experience here because this is our wheelhouse. So if you want to test your dog for allergies, you want a blood allergy test. You don't want a hair allergy test. Hair allergy tests normally cost around $100 and you can chuck them in the bin after you get them because they are absolutely worthless. If you want to do it properly, it costs about $1,000 and you take your dog to the vet. They take a blood sample and then they run tests on your dog and they test your dog's allergies, and that's a lot more comprehensive and a lot better than the hair test. So that would be the only way to determine precisely what your dog is allergic to. And sometimes a lot of those pathogens aren't really going to be present, because if your dog is, say, reactive to bison and your dog has never been in contact with bison, it's very hard for that blood test to come back saying that your dog is allergic to bison. So you do have to take things with a pinch of salt even in those cases. So that's one way. The other way is to give your dog a single protein food and to eliminate some of the most common allergens or potential allergens, the most common and prevalent allergens. We have, as a generic rule of thumb, cereals, wheat, barley, corn, soy, things like meat and bone meal, things like natural flavors, things like meat and animal derivatives, things like animal fat, for example. All those are high glycemic carbohydrates, over processed foods. A lot of dogs don't sit well with those foods, and then a lot of the meat and animal derivatives and a lot of the animal fats are very, very unspecific. So it is going to be impossible for your dog to know what he's been reactive to. If you give your dog animal fats, which is very, very unspecific, the manufacturer might put beef, then pork, then chicken, then mackerel, then whatever, and your dog might have diarrhea every now and then because the manufacturer is going to be changing that particular ingredient. So I want you to go for a food that is high in protein from one single protein source that is going to be at the same time quite rare. That is not going to be beef, it's not going to be chicken, and it's not going to be any of the most common ones, for example. But I want you to choose bison, kangaroo, horse. I want you to choose something that is very, very left field. Goat, for example, mackerel, quail. Think outside the box and feed the dog that particular protein. And at the same time, I want you to go grain-free if possible, but I don't want you to give your dog on the back of the packet 50% potato, because that is going to defeat the purpose. You want high meat, low carb, and then you want to not give the dog anything else. You don't want the dog to get any treats or nothing at all, and you want to test that for 8 weeks and see if the dog is getting any better. At the same time, I want you to add a little bit of a probiotic. I want you to give your dog maybe a little bit of kefir or a little bit of yogurt with your dog's meals. Now, at this stage, I don't want you to overcomplicate things. I don't want you to give your dog this, that, this, and the other. But there's loads of things you can do progressively as you go along on this journey. But at first, you want to stop any diarrhea, and at first you want to stop any upset stomachs, and from there you can start adding back all the things or incorporating all the things to your dog's diet. But yes, high meat, left field option, and then very low carbohydrates. Homemade dog food recipe. This is interesting. So chicken roasted on 375 with sweet potato and apple and 3 tablespoons of butter, 2 cups of water for 1.5 hours, a cup cooked brown rice, and a can of peas and carrots. Once potato and apple are cooked, mash with peas and carrots and mix with rice. Debone chicken and hand shred. Add 2 cups of chicken gravy made from drippings and broth created by cooking chicken. Gravy is simply a 1/4 cup flour and the chicken dripping and broth. Once all combined, I weigh out 8-ounce servings, and my chunky dog lost 10 pounds simply by changing from store bought to homemade. Entire meal only cost $15 to make and feed her 4 to 5 days. I mean, this is literally a recipe for disaster. And yes, your dog might be losing weight, but your dog is not losing weight appropriately, in my opinion. It looks here that you are cooking for yourself instead of a dog. I mean, the whole notion that our dogs should be fed like us, it's a little bit silly and it's a little bit redundant. And for example here, I do not see any organ meat. I do not see any lung, any liver, any spleen, any kidney. I don't see any of those which are part of your dog's diet or should be a part of your dog's diet. I hope that you aren't giving the dog any cooked bones, for example, because they will splinter and they can cause really important vet bills. And you aren't providing your dog with a bone source either, and that should comprise around 10% of your dog's diet. So we don't have any organ meats and we do not have any bone, and those are essential part for your dog to have a healthy life. All the minerals and vitamins that come from heart, spleen, liver, kidney, those simply cannot be overlooked. And then you have to give your dog a source of calcium or a bone. You then go into giving your dog 3 tablespoons of butter, which are absolutely unnecessary. If butter is unnecessary for us and they are excess calories and excess dietary fat, and excess dietary fat is going to then be very bad for your bad cholesterol. You have HDL cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, and fat, generally speaking, when you overconsume calories, is really bad for your bad cholesterol, and so that's not going to be very good. Now, your dog is losing weight because you are restricting calories, not because of any magic formula that you are doing. So instead of trying to feed your dog like a human being, and instead of trying to roast a chicken with all the trimmings and everything and gravy and added salt and things like that, then I would highly recommend you instruct yourself on how to feed dogs better. A dog's diet ideally should comprise of 80-10-10, and this can obviously vary. 80% should be lean meat. So 80%, if you want to be chicken, you can give your dog 80% of good quality chicken. And then 10% should be offal and liver. 5% should be liver and 10% should be other offal. And then around 10% of your dog's diet should be bone. And if you then want to add 5% of vegetables or fruits or whatever, they have to be pureed so the dog can absorb all the nutrients and all the vitamins. But you can't really cook a chicken with gravy, with the drippings, with butter, and with all these things that are really going to be pretty bad for your dog in the long term. You at least risk your dog getting sick. So yeah, your dog is losing weight because you are restricting calories, but their diet isn't the best. So yes, your dog's health markers are going to improve in the short term, but in the long term, I wouldn't recommend doing this at all.